2025 felt like the year where everything I've been warning people about actually started freaking happening. It's a bit scary, but this includes things like age verification spreading across continents, VPN bans being proposed, on-device surveillance becoming policy, but also we have some good stuff, which is massive pushback, wins still happening, all-time high number of people getting involved in digital rights. So I wanted to start this new yearly tradition where we come together and we do this thing called the Digital Rights Awards, where I'm going to cover what happened the most in this previous year, not just what happened, but why it matters for the internet and what we can look forward to in the next year. I have 10 rewards to give out. You'll see them on screen. So let's get into part one, which is the wins. The first award goes to the victory of the year. And this goes to what I think is the biggest victory for digital rights in 2025. It's not necessarily the most impactful victory. It's just a really impressive story. And it's a great win that really demonstrates what we can do when we actually get shit done. So the first thing that came across my desk was India's Sanchar Sathi's backdown. Pretty much what happened here is India came forward to government and said, hey, we want to install this app that's mandated on every single device, whether it's a device you already own or a device that's being sent out, and you're legally required to have this app that scans everything you do running 24/7. It was all positioned as this safety app to keep everyone safe. But obviously this wasn't good, and then it caused massive backlash, and India reversed that mandate within 3 days. The other thing that came across my desk is the UK situation. So pretty much in July of this year, UK implemented age verification. 500,000 people, over 500,000 people I should say, signed that petition. And yes, they're now trying to double down on this. I just covered that recently, but the backlash is working. Otherwise they wouldn't still be trying new things. The third thing that came across my desk was chat control's continuous delays. This stuff was supposed to be passed a long time ago. This whole encryption ban / surveillance laws that the EU's been proposing for a long time. And well, it's still being fought out. It's now been delayed all the way through 2026. And so this should have passed a long time ago, and it's still being fought, which means that this is overall a victory as far as we can make it go. Of the three, I had to think about it quite a bit, but I feel like the most decisive victory of the year, I have to give it to India. You all really fought back hard, and the Indian government's like, okay, yeah, they actually, it's so bad they had to make up what happened. Their story of events is, well, we never meant it to be legally mandated. Ooh, it was just a suggestion the whole time, when the original writing was very directly worded as a mandate. So congrats to you all for fighting back on that, and I did think that was a very fun, decisive victory of the year. The second award is the Underdog Award, and this goes to a person, a group, an organization, really anyone or anything that's been fighting against something massive, kind of all on their own, and they're going against a big dog. So the first option that came across my desk was actually something called the NeuroRights Foundation, and if you haven't heard of this, I think that speaks to how it's the Underdog Award. So this is a small team that's fighting for mental health privacy protections, and they actually ended up passing the first US mental privacy law in Colorado, which is very cool, very underrated, and I feel like no one really discussed this at all, including us, but this is a huge win. Up next, this one I felt weird about because they're not really an underdog, but it was still an option, which is Apple fighting against UK's end-to-end encryption backdoor. Pretty much the UK government this year tapped on Apple behind the scenes and said, yo, we need to backdoor your encryption, especially now that you guys have this advanced data protection feature in iCloud. Apple was like, hell no, we're not gonna do this. In fact, we're actually going to remove the feature outright and make this a publicity stunt so that people are aware of what happened. This was supposed to be a secret backdoor, yet Apple made it well known to the public what was going on. That is pretty awesome, and yes, Apple's not an underdog, but I feel like in this story, they kind of are. Up next, we have F-Droid versus Google. So Google came forward and has been really trying to lock down Android, including preventing sideloading from being as easily accessible to most people. And well, F-Droid and many other organizations stepped forward and said, hell no, we don't want this. And they have been doing a ton of great coverage, and they've even helped collaborate with other people to build fantastic websites and resources that has been getting thousands of people involved in a fight that they might have never been involved with in the first place. And we also have what I actually ended up choosing to be the winner, which is Patrick Breyer versus chat control. Now, if you have been following our chat control stuff going on in the EU, where they're trying to ban end-to-end encryption, you'll know that almost everything cited comes from Patrick. He is a single MEP from Germany. He's fighting the entire EU establishment that's trying to push chat control. He's like the only core person who's really getting his name out there and publishing this stuff every single day. He's posting analysis, he's organizing resistance, he's speaking publicly about it. He has personal blogs that break this down so that people like us can even do coverage for it in the first place. So without Patrick and all the people that Patrick's collaborating with, yeah, there's like no way we could reasonably even fight chat control. There would just be no organization whatsoever. His analysis is cited by us, by everyone else on YouTube, by the EFF, by journalists, by activists globally. Pretty much anything you see covered about chat control almost always comes back to Patrick in some way or another. So this is just one guy with technical expertise and a willingness to fight for what's right and be able to explain things clearly. And I just couldn't give the award to anyone else other than Patrick. But of course, amazing props to everybody else in this award category. This is kind of a fun one. So this is the People Award. This is an award that goes to an overall event where many of you came together to successfully fight back for your digital rights in some way. And I had 3 of them that came across my desk. The first one is the UK's 500,000 age verification petition signers. I already referenced this earlier in the video, where the UK came forward and wanted to age verify everything, and 500,000 plus of you came together to say no to surveillance. The second option was global VPN usage spiked as protest when tons of people in the UK didn't want to do age verification, and then they just started using VPNs instead. In fact, we also saw this in the US as well, when people like Florida implemented similar things, and then we saw also VPN spikes. So overall, just anyone who moved over to a VPN to not have to hand over their ID to countless websites, I'd overall say is part of the People's Award. And then the option C is the countless people who stood up and signed petitions to protest Google's new Android changes that make sideloading far more difficult for people. At the end of the day, these were all fantastic wins, and they were great demonstrations of what we as a collective community can do. But I have to give it to the UK. Over 500,000 people. Like, that is not an easy number. And people are pissed about this. The UK is really angering a lot of people. Regular people in the UK who might have never even known about tech or digital rights or anything are now being exposed to this for the first time. And it was just by far the clearest public demonstration at scale of public opposition to surveillance that I thought was awesome. Part 2 is the threats. So these are the things that aren't the best. And we're gonna start with the first award, which is the 4th total award of this video, which is the biggest threat award. This award goes to something, it goes to a person, a group, a company, an organization, or even just a general pattern or something that poses a massive threat to nearly everyone. You do not want to win this award. And honestly, in the other award categories, I had many things that I could give you guys as like, hey, these are kind of the things I thought about, but this one didn't have that. This one just had a single definitive winner, which is what I'm calling this age verification cycle. The pattern here is that governments pass what seemingly seems like good laws, right? We don't want children accessing porn. We don't want children accessing social media websites. We want better regulation around this. And you know, it sounds good, but then people don't want to hand over their IDs. They don't want an age-verified internet. They don't want a non-anonymous internet. So people migrate to VPNs, they migrate to Tor, and the usage spikes overnight. Then governments say, hey, these tools undermine child safety. So then we now get governments who want to ban VPNs and require age verification, and even now propose things like on-device surveillance so that you can't get around any of this stuff. This happened in Australia, this happened in the UK, this happened in the US, and this happened in the EU. And why this is the biggest threat, to me, is because it sounds so reasonable. If you get somebody who's never heard of any of this before and you ask them, hey, do you think that kids should be protected or they should outright avoid social media, porn, etc.? And most people would say yes. And so when you hear this idea of banning social media from kids, it actually sounds fine, because I'm also kind of in that boat. I don't think children should be on social media all day. However, having the government mandate this thing that requires everybody, regardless if you're an adult or you're a child, to have to age verify themselves in order to verify who is who, now you have much bigger problems on your hands, where you now have to collect all this data about everybody. You have to tie all of their web traffic to a centralized identity. And then you also have to worry about what happens when people get around these laws. And now we see a clampdown in encryption tools and privacy tools and security tools and just overall digital freedom on the internet. The end result of this is almost a completely KYC'd internet, where there is no anonymity whatsoever, which isn't just bad for individuals, but it's bad for journalists, it's bad for abuse victims, it's bad for even children at times. Sometimes children need to be able to access resources without it being tied to them. And they don't want to be caught in data leaks as a result of having to upload their ID to websites, which, yes, is also a downside to all of this. So I think that it's really important to outline that this isn't a coincidence. It's happening all around the world. It is following a very similar playbook, and it's working in multiple countries simultaneously. We are in real time watching the anonymous internet get legislated out of existence in real time, and it's all being sold under child safety. This is extremely concerning, and this is the only person that could win the biggest threat award. It's not a person, but you guys know what I mean. And then the next award is going to be the Trojan Horse Award. And it's kind of what it sounds like. It's something that's being proposed as something good, as like, hey, this is the new next best thing, but it has a really nasty underside. It's a very fun award because every year we see some new things that really implement this kind of strategy to, do nefarious things. The first one is what I just talked about, which is using child safety as a justification for surveillance tools. The second thing that came across my desk that was very popular this year is AI Trojan horses. So the general idea here is, you have this new AI feature. It's like, yo guys, this feature is awesome. We need it. We're going to push it onto you. But there are some very nefarious behind the scenes things happening as a result of it, even if there are some potential upsides to the feature itself. Some examples of this is Android 16 forcing Gemini in too many places. We have Facebook scanning photos by default now, and even companies like Apple, which don't even like AI that much, it seems like, or they're not good at it, hard to tell the difference, automatically opting some users into AI analysis of their photos. So make sure to look into that if you haven't already turned that off. The next Trojan horse is a bit inspired from a data leak this year that showed just how pervasive tracking via advertising is and how it can actually expose your user location across different applications. What this means is that if you just have ads running on your phone and you open 3 different apps, you can be tracked across those 3 apps just because of ads. And the thing that makes this a Trojan horse is because some people might say, hey, I don't mind ads. I don't mind personalized recommendations. I don't mind XYZ, and that's fine. But what they don't see is the vicious behind the scenes stuff that's going on in the background that's actually making those ads so personalized. And that is, to this day, year after year, still a Trojan horse. I don't want this to be the case every year. I looked at all 3 of these and I went, who should I give the award to? And I just couldn't give it to anyone else other than the child safety law thing. I know it's pretty much the same thing I gave the last award to, but I think it's really important to outline just how damaging this is as a Trojan horse. So I have to give it to child safety. Child safety is not a full justification for having on-device surveillance. All right, this is hands down my favorite award of this video, and it's the BACKSTAB award. So this is who or what betrayed users, people the most, what they did, why it's worse than other threats, and also some of the emotional weight behind them. So we have the Google and Android ecosystem lockdown. This one really sucked because traditionally, since the beginning of Android, it was designed to be an open ecosystem. I've heard different narratives as to why, but the main one I've really seen is that, Apple came out with the iPhone in 2007, and it was just so far ahead of everything else. And so Google was like, yo, we need to compete. We're gonna make it open source so that we can get as many people to help on this as possible, and we can have as many resources as possible. But we've been seeing Google move in more and more lockdown directions to the point now where Android is starting to propose things that look and feel a lot like iOS. And Google's decision to now try to tackle sideloading, which is one of the best features and the best reasons to use Android over iOS, is a massive backstab to any user on Android. The second one is WhatsApp, who was caught literally leaking everyone's phone numbers and making them freely scrapable and not even acknowledging it as a problem. They were like, yeah, dude, that's just like intentional design, bro. We don't really mind. It's like, yeah, and it's like, dude, no. These researchers were literally able to just go in and just mass scrape everybody's numbers. There was no rate limiting. There was literally nothing preventing these researchers from doing it, which means that when you receive scam messages on WhatsApp, that's probably because some scammers got together in a room and just had a server running 24/7 to just scrape WhatsApp phone numbers. And WhatsApp literally was like, yeah, that's fine, we don't mind this. If you use WhatsApp, that's a massive backstab. Next, we have the digital omnibus and how it weakens GDPR. Bit of context here, in the EU they have GDPR, which is one of the strongest privacy regulations in the world, and it's inspired many of the other regulations that we've seen in other places. But we now have this new thing called the Digital Omnibus. What this does is it's essentially gutting some of the core protections of GDPR in the EU in favor of trying to compete against other AI companies in the US and make AI more friendly and make it easier to collect data on users and give users less rights when it comes to companies. So this is a huge backstab for a place that has always been very pro-privacy, very pro-consumer. EU, not good. The next one is kind of a tale as old as time, but it's Microsoft refusing to extend security updates for Windows 10. So if you've been using Windows 10, you've probably heard by now how they're trying to not push security updates any further, but after a ton of backlash, they have kind of somewhat agreed to have these weird programs in place to still have some layer of security updates. But on top of that, they're also making it harder to access Windows 11 without any kind of Microsoft account. So the local option is much harder. And as always, I feel like Microsoft is just backstabbing its users. And the final one that came across my desk is the T-App data breach. This one was quite the polarizing story, but pretty much there was a branded safety app which was designed to keep women safe when they were dating, but a lot of people were accusing this app of also doxing people who weren't doing anything wrong and had no representation in the app. It is just messy as hell, and as always, the internet has no nuance, and so this was very polarizing. You were either pro or against T-App, but I feel like no matter what, when you have a platform that's designed around safety and you have a data breach and you now jeopardize everyone on your platform, that's a backstab, regardless of whose side you're on, and that's just crazy. So we had a lot of fun backstabs this year. I mean, none of them are good, but they're fun to cover now in retrospect. But I did, after thinking about it, I just felt like the most damaging one and the one that maybe people didn't see coming, and it threw a lot of people off guard, and it has the most impact. And I just felt like it was the biggest backstab. It really was sad to cover. I do have to give it to the EU with the Digital Omnibus. The GDPR really has been such a big part of the EU identity. I'm not in the EU, but like when I think of the EU, when I think of all of you in there, privacy, GDPR, like all those things are just part of what I associate with the EU. And to have the EU do something that so obviously goes against that kind of identity is a huge backstab to the EU, but also to the world. The world was inspired by GDPR, and now the EU went, no, we're gonna weaken it a little bit. And now what's gonna happen to the rest of places around the world? I don't know, but that was a pretty bad backstab. So I think did just have to give it to the EU on that. People and progress. This is part 3, and we're gonna start with the Champion of the Year award. This is typically an individual who I think really shined this year and did something positive for digital rights in some capacity. First person is Patrick Breyer. We already talked about him earlier in the video, but he's been really leading the path when it comes to chat control in the EU and how we can oppose it and organize. Then we have Mishi Chowdhury, who is the SFLC.in founder, and the third person is Cindy Cohen from the EFF. Cindy Cohen announced a 25-year tenure and has stepped down after a decade as the executive director. And this is a huge career for digital rights. I did have to reflect on this, and while Patrick, I think, might have deserved this award, I did have to give this to Cindy. Cindy has had an incredible career representing one of the world's most important digital rights organizations. It was just awesome to see like a nice transition out of that role, and I'm really excited for the future of the EFF. The internet just wouldn't be the same without the EFF. All right, the 8th award is what I'm calling the Breakthrough of the Year award. So these are just breakthroughs, things that improved, things that made our lives better. And it's really hard because it's hard to go back and find like every single thing. When we look at the digital rights space and the tools and the things that we have access to from January 1st to what's about to be January 1st, I don't know when we're publishing this, maybe it'll already be January 1st, I don't know where it's about to be. There are many improvements. Like we have services get little updates, like maybe this thing you used to use got a system theme and now you don't have to manually transition between light and dark mode. Maybe it just got some UI UX improvements, maybe it got better privacy and security. Like we really have seen, if you compare the services you used on January 1st, 2025 to 2026, you're going to see these little improvements really add up over time. The ones that really stood out to me though, we have Proton's ecosystem expansion. I think Proton has still continued to push and still try to give a viable alternative to Google and Microsoft for people that want that ecosystem. I think it's a genuine thing that really helps people quickly migrate to something else. They're demonstrating that sustainable privacy-first business models can exist and be real alternatives to big tech. And Proton Calendar got many important updates this year, and they also released Proton Sheets, and all of their ecosystem got minor improvements along the way as well. I still would love to see Proton VPN for Linux. The next thing that came across my desk is Tor project censorship resistance improvements. Overall, the Tor project has made a lot of little improvements over the years to make it harder to block, make it more accessible to regular people who need access in light of all of this stuff that's happening in the world right now. So I think the Tor project deserves a massive shout out for all this stuff going on. I have the Session Protocol v2. This isn't out yet. I want to make that very clear, but Session has announced that they are working on a v2 protocol. And Session is an end-to-end encrypted messenger. It's decentralized and it's meant to be somewhat of an alternative to something like Signal with a little bit more anonymity in mind. The core complaint is that its encryption is in some ways weaker than something like Signal because it doesn't have perfect forward secrecy. So if someone jeopardized one encryption key, it jeopardizes the whole chat. But v2 for this protocol is supposed to fix that. So that should hopefully address many people's concerns. And it's not done yet, but I'd love to see what that looks like heading into next year. And finally, I actually just migrated to a new phone, so I got to test this feature firsthand, but Signal released end-to-end encrypted backups. And I think this is huge because Signal has not done a very good job in terms of doing backups and restorations between Android and iOS devices. I believe Android has had its own backup system for a while that works on only Android, and then iOS has its own feature that only works on iOS. But now we have this cloud-based feature, which it's like $2 a month, and it's for 100 gigabytes, which I think is more than fair. And you can even use it for free on a limited capacity, but it still has all the protections you expect from Signal, but it does end-to-end encrypted backups and makes it super easy for you to transition to a new phone or just simply have a backup of all your chats somewhere in the cloud. This is a feature that people expect from a messenger like Signal. Signal is meant to compete against WhatsApp, against Telegram, and they already have similar features. So when Signal releases something like this, it's one more reason to move away from those other platforms. So in terms of who to give the Breakthrough of the Year award to, I was stuck between Tor project and Signal on this one, but I did have to give it to the Tor project. I feel like we need the Tor project. We need something decentralized, especially with all the stuff going on in the world. I think centralized things are awesome. I use centralized things every day, but I still use some decentralized things, and I think it's kind of a reflection of what's happening in the world. There are very clear situations where you shouldn't be relying on centralized services, and it's normally in a situation where there's some kind of government crackdown on a specific service that we now need to start migrating to decentralized services. And I think that order of operations is fine. Decentralized services typically come with a lot of usability trade-offs, and so if you want to lean into centralized services day to day and then have decentralized services ready to go, that's awesome. And I feel like the Tor project's work behind the scenes is going to really pave the future path forward for the internet, especially if things get worse. All right, and now the last section, part 4, this is definitely more of the personal section. The 9th award goes to the Lesson of the Year award. And this is a little bit like, this is the most that we're going to like pat ourselves on the back here. And it's mostly to discuss, I don't know, things we've learned. So it could be mistakes we made or like things that I've evolved my opinions on. And also is just, you know, probably the best reminder to give to all of you. And the first lesson that when I reflected on 2025 that came to mind is that there's a cost of doing too much. Part of what I've learned from all of this, especially since we had to, you know, drop the overall amount of people who are able to help on TECHLORE was we can't be everywhere for everyone all at once. And that's just the reality of life. Like I want to be able to have 10 different communities on all these different platforms. I want to be active on socials every day. I want to be on YouTube every day. I want to do shorts. I want to be on TikTok. I want to do whatever else people do, like Discord room things, the spaces. I don't know what they're called. But my point is, I would love to just have infinite time and do all the things all at once. But it's just me and one other person, you know? We're both full-time, but we still have to have focused bandwidth. So how this lesson really maybe came across to all of you is like, oh my gosh, it seems like they're really like removing a lot of things. And yeah, but from our perspectives, we're simplifying things. Like we don't have that much time and we want to focus all of our bandwidth where it creates the most impact rather than trying to do it all. So yes, that meant the forum closure. That meant moving to a simpler website. That meant centralizing things a little bit more, but we still go all in on YouTube. We still have PeerTube as a great alternative for all of you. Check it out at techlore.tv. We self-host that, it's open source, and that is how you can watch our content. And let me tell you, it's been so much more calm back here, and it's allowed us to just really focus on the things that we want to focus on. So this has direct impacts on all of us, but also indirect impacts, and it's something I'm really excited about going into 2026 because we've never been leaner and meaner, and I'm really excited about it. The second lesson is that normies, whatever you want to call them, beginners, whatever term resonates best with you, care. They really do care when you explain it right. We've really migrated away from just doing privacy purism and being like, this tool is slightly better than this tool because of this behind the scenes thing. And we've really migrated and really owned up to this digital rights for everyone kind of approach to things. I've learned that people actually do really care about this stuff. They don't care about tool specs. They don't care about this versus that, but they care about losing their freedom. They care about the government being on their phones 24/7, tracking everything they send. We all just need to come together and find the best way to communicate these issues to the people around us. And everyone's gonna have a different issue that resonates with them. This is personalized to where you live. This is personalized to who you're talking to. It has to do with their age, probably even their gender. Like, there's so many different things out there that impact what someone values and what they care about. And so all those things need to be taken into consideration. And on that note, kind of the third lesson is that the fight does work. I still see some of you who are pessimistic in the comments, and I know that exists, but we need to be optimistic if we want to have any hope and any reason to fight, right? If we're pessimistic, we're not going to do anything. But India backed down from surveillance in 3 days. Chat control is still not passed. UK proposals, yes, I don't know what the hell they're doing. They're going crazy and they're doubling down on some insane stuff, but you know what? It's still been stalled. We also have Apple and Google that somewhat have beat the Texas age verification law temporarily and at least delayed that from happening because a judge thought that it was a complete freedom of speech violation. So this year I was reminded that fighting, speaking, organizing, getting involved works. And when you see people in the comments or on, internet communities who come together and say there's no point, we need to battle that really intensely, not because we're against those people, because we're all on the same side, but because we need to remind everyone that yes, we need to be optimistic and we need to remind ourselves that we can make an impact. And I think lesson 2 and 3 kind of together are going to be the lesson of the year, and they deserve the award. I think in this new year, we should all reflect on how we speak about these issues and how we can reach new people and how we can frame it in a more positive way. All right, and then we have the last award of our 2025 Digital Rights Award, and it's the Next Big Fight Award. This is forward-looking. It's not just threats, but what we want to build and prevent, and specific things that we need to watch and support. There was a lot of things, but I'm just gonna keep it simple. We're at the end of the video now. I think that we need to really stop the age verification cycle. That is the next big fight, and it's still happening. It started this year. Maybe you could argue it started before this year, but it's really amplified big time. We need to get ahead of countries right now. A lot of countries are starting to pop up as we speak, like Denmark, that are saying we're going to ban social media for kids, and we need to instantly come at that hard and be like, hey, how is that being done, right? We all agree that kids probably shouldn't be on social media and some of these other sites online as much as they do, but is age verification the approach to deal with that? I would argue no, and I think that it comes with way too many downsides. So the next big fight is age verification. Not because of age verification itself per se, but because of everything that comes along with it. It's the VPN bans that follow. It's the on-device surveillance that follows. It's attacking encryption that follows. If we don't break this pattern ASAP, like starting now through 2026, the anonymous internet as we know it, and kind of the internet we've always known since it was originally created, will not even look the same. It's an ID upload for every website. It's constant 24/7 on-device scanning on your phones, on your computers. It is just this whole new kind of internet we've never seen before that's going to feel very isolated, no longer like interconnected, no longer decentralized. It's just not a fun-looking internet. So let's stop this cycle before it gets too crazy. Yeah, all right, so that was the 10th award. And this was pretty fun to do. It was very much inspired by MKBHD's Smartphone Awards of the Year. And I wanted to find a way to translate it to the things we talk about on this channel. And I'd like to just start more traditions here on TECHLORE as well, things that, we all can come back to doing together and kind of reconnecting a little bit more, especially since the forum is gone now. I want to try to find more ways to include a community with you all on our Ghost as well as on our YouTube. And so the 3 actions I have for all of you. The first thing is to stay informed. You can subscribe and enable notifications on YouTube if you haven't already. You can also follow literally everything we do via RSS. It can be our videos, it can be our PeerTube, it can be socials. Like, we have instructions for it on our website. And speaking of that, we are on Ghost now. That is our website, and you can subscribe to our newsletter there. And of course, follow other people in the digital rights space as well. I think the EFF is doing wonderful work. I think the EDRI is doing awesome. The Free Software Foundation of Europe. Like, we have so many great organizations doing great things. The second thing, support the fight in some way. I know we've been doing a lot of coverage for AFDS, which is the Ad Filtering Dev Summit, and kind of my whole talk was about this, but it doesn't need to be us. A lot of these organizations have thousands, hundreds of thousands, or millions of people who engage with their stuff, but like less than 1% of those people actually contribute. The EFF, open rights groups, Privacy International, like all these different organizations are all doing some fantastic work, but very few people who actually benefit from the work actually contribute back. So support the fight when you can, and if it's not financial, you can still share that content around, you can still spread awareness, you can still engage with what they do, you can still share it on your socials, so support the fight. And the third thing, which I would argue is the biggest thing you can do, is talk to people. Talk to people in real life. We need that human connection. That is where your message can really resonate with others, and you can directly build bonds and build that communication and that relationship. And I think that is actually probably one of the most impactful things you can do to onboard them and understand what's going on in the world, because they're also going to be voting just like you. So talk to those people. So yeah, 2025 was a great fight. I want to thank you all for being a part of it and following our journey as we try to figure things out. And I hope 2026, again, we're lean and mean and we're ready to be a fighting machine. I just thought of that right now, but I think it's very reflective of the direction we're headed. So I want to thank you all for being a part of this, for supporting us. If you like what we're doing, you can join our memberships down in the description. That stuff is super helpful, and we have some private Signal groups and really cool perks to share with you all. So I'll see you all in the new year. If it's not already the new year, kind of depends how fast Tori edits this, and we'll see you for the next awards next year. Thank you all again for a wonderful year, and Happy New Year's.